what I'm going to talk about now is the fact that there are certain questions you have to settle in your own head before you actually begin writing, or before you successfully sort of hit your writing stride. And until you've settled these questions, you're going to find, I find writing very difficult. And I'm going to start by just talking about what do you want to write about. Because I was a successful magazine writer, knowing I wanted to write a book. And I just had this huge problem in the mid-1990s, which was I wanted to write a book and I had no idea what to write it about. And every time I had an article in then Saturday Night magazine, publishers would come to me, because publishers love it when it's an established byline. Publishers don't like taking risks. So somebody they know can produce and has some kind of, is sort of fairly well known in the literary community. They always say, oh, you did such a great article about so-and-so, would you do a book on it? By the time I'd finished writing an article about the individual or the issue or whatever it was, I was bored stiff with it. I never wanted to actually spend 2, 3, 4 years of my life actually with them. Then I thought, well, what do I want to write about? And I produced various ideas. But in each case, I realized that I wouldn't actually read the book. I could write it. As a professional writer, I can write about pretty well everything. Even as I discovered writing about Alexander Graham Bell, I can even write about how airplanes work, which was, I can tell you, a stretch. But I want to write always a book that I want to read. It really has to be something that I identify very closely with. I also write biography and history, and with the biographies, I have to like the person, and I have to want to live with them for 2 or 3 or more years. You have to find a subject that you really want to write about, and it's a story you really want to read. And that's why, for example, 2 of you mentioned wanting to tell your mother's story and one about your own story. Obviously, those are subjects nobody else is going to write about, but they're subjects that you're deeply engaged with. You want to write about them and you want to read about them. And that is a very good starting point. If you are really engaged with the subject you've chosen, or what you were saying about you want to write about something that happened to you and a friend in 1995. This has obviously been something that's in your head, in your conscious and your subconscious. Now, it's obviously difficult when you're so engaged with the subject to find a shape and to, but it's something that you're committed to. And for me, that's actually the most important, the single most important issue when I'm considering what to write about. Am I really going to be engaged with this subject? Now, the kind of biography I want to write is always a biography that actually reads like a novel. That's what I have sort of tried to evolve in my writing career. And I know that for that, when I say read like a novel, that means actually getting inside the characters. That means, so that obviously it's not, for instance, appropriate for a self-help book. I know that's not what you're writing, but a self-help book, none of what I'm going to say now is particularly relevant. But for a history or a biography to come alive, I need real, live, flesh and blood people. And for that, because the people I choose to write about are always dead, I need letters, I need diaries, I need journals, I need primary material that I can read, primary material in the subject's own voice, so that I can actually get Susanna Mooney complaining about how cold it is. I'm sure we both know those passages. Or I can get, I can hear Catherine Partrail's voice, relentlessly optimistic, but with this undertone of worry because she is completely flat broke. Or similarly with Alexander Graham Bell, I can get some of the sort of obsessiveness because he writes to his wife in Paris in the late 1890s. He writes a letter to her, and they haven't seen each other for 2 months. And what does he write? He just writes a catalogue of all the items in the Encyclopedia Britannica that he's just read. You know, I mean, but you want that kind of detail so that these characters really come to life for you. So when I've found a subject I'm interested in, it's not enough that I think I want to live with this person. I also have to know, can I get inside them? Can I present them as a fully rounded character within the book, rather than somebody, you know, where I say, you know, and then she went and lived in northern Saskatchewan, and then she joined the Communist Party, and then she went on the campaign trail, and then she did this or that, and you don't know anything. Well, why is she doing these things? And sort of, you know, what was it? Did she hate Saskatchewan? Did she love it? I mean, you need to know what's motivating these individuals. And of course, it's not a purely selfish initiative that you're taking. You might think this person is fascinating. You may think that there's enough material to bring them alive. But does anybody else care? Does anybody else want to read about them? And this is always the challenge for family memoirs, that many, many people want to write family memoirs, and they are of enormous value and importance to the family. It's tougher getting them published, because always now what publishers are looking for is celebrity. And so it has to be a really good story to find a publisher. But it's not necessary to get published. Yes, to be a published author has a lot of status. You're not going to make money. I don't think many writers even begin by thinking they're going to make money, but you're not going to make money. It's nice to have it between hardcovers, but you can actually self-publish. And sometimes you want to write the story you want to write. You want to know how to write the story you want to write. You want that story to be there for your children and grandchildren. But setting the bar too high by saying, and I'm going to find a publisher for this, can distract you from telling the best stories sometimes. It can sometimes mean that you know, you're too busy sort of thinking of the neutral eye, the critical eye on what you're writing, and that's very inhibiting. It does sometimes mean that you don't write the best story you could write. You should just write what you want to write, and then draw breath and ask your friends if they'll look at it and is it any good. But if a story, a family memoir, turns out to be just for the children, that's still, I think, heavenly. Because someone like me will come along quite often and say, I'm writing about this other person, but they grew up with your mum, or they grew up with your grandfather. And can I read your family memoir to see the kind of details you've got? So it all does feed in to a literary culture, and into sort of a national culture too, an understanding what the past was like for Canadians.